Hey people, and welcome to this video. In this video, we will be looking at ways that we can prove that a shape or a quadrilateral is a parallelogram. So before looking at that, let's go ahead and look at the properties of a parallelogram. So the first thing we know about a parallelogram is that we have the opposite sides of a parallelogram being parallel. So this side is parallel to this side, and this side is parallel to this side. Then the second thing we know about a parallelogram is that the opposite sides are equal. So this side is equal to this side, and this side is equal to this side. And now we can look at the diagonals of a parallelogram. Okay, so we have diagonals, lines going across like that, and another line going across like that. And what we know about these diagonals is that the diagonals bisect each other. Now, for lines to bisect each other, it just means that the line is cutting the other line into two equal parts. So this longer diagonal cuts that other diagonal into two equal parts, making this part equal to this part. Okay, so these two are equal. Likewise, the shorter diagonal also bisects this longer diagonal, making this equal to this. Okay, and so really all that means is that this is the midpoint of both diagonals. It's the midpoint of this line. It's also the midpoint of this line, that diagonal. Okay, so that's what we know about the diagonals of a parallelogram. And then we also know that the opposite angles in a parallelogram are equal. So this angle over here is equal to this angle, and this angle is equal to this angle. So that is it for the properties of a parallelogram. And now we can move on to how we prove that a shape is a parallelogram. Okay, so one way to prove that a shape is a parallelogram is to prove that the opposite sides are parallel. So if we are somehow given that AD is parallel to BC and AB is parallel to DC, then that proves that the shape is a parallelogram. And the reason for this would be because we have the opposite sides being parallel, or both pairs of opposite sides are parallel. The second way to prove that a shape is a parallelogram is to prove that both pairs of opposite sides are equal. So if we find that AD is equal to BC and AB is equal to DC, then this is a parallelogram. And the reason it would be a parallelogram is because both pairs of opposite sides are equal. The third way to prove that a quadrilateral is a parallelogram is to prove that a pair of opposite sides are both equal and parallel. Okay, so just pick one pair of opposite sides. We could take AD and BC, and if we are given or we are able to prove that AD is both equal to BC and parallel to BC, then this is a parallelogram. We could also prove that AB is both equal and parallel to DC, and then this shape is a parallelogram. So in this case, ABCD would also be a parallelogram because we had a pair of opposite sides being both parallel and equal. The fourth way to prove that a shape is a parallelogram is to prove that the diagonals bisect each other. Now remember that this means that diagonals each cut each other into two equal parts. So making, let's say this is a point, and we'll just call that center point M, that would mean that AM would be equal to MC and BM would be equal to MD. Now, how you would prove this would be to prove that if you are given the coordinates. So one way we could prove this is when given the coordinates of these points, let's say we were given A and C and B and D, if you can find the midpoint of one diagonal, let's say A and C, right? We find the midpoint of that diagonal, and then you find out that that midpoint has the exact same coordinates as the midpoint of line BD, then that means that this is indeed a parallelogram because the diagonals bisect each other, seeing how the diagonals have a common midpoint. Okay, M is the midpoint of AC and M is also the midpoint of BD. And in this case, we would be able to conclude that ABCD is indeed a parallelogram, seeing that the midpoint of AC is exactly the same as the midpoint of BD. Okay, so that would mean that the diagonals do indeed bisect each other. The last and final way to prove that a quadrilateral is a parallelogram is to prove that the opposite angles are equal. So if you're able to prove that this angle, angle A, or we can call that angle BAD, is equal to angle BCD or angle C, and at the same time we have that angle B is equal to angle D, then this shape is indeed a parallelogram. And our reason for that, of course, will be because we have both pairs of opposite angles being equal in the shape. So it is a parallelogram. And those are the 5 ways to prove that a shape is a parallelogram. So that's it for this video. Hope you guys have a great day ahead, and I will see you guys in the future videos.